Our whole life, no matter how long we live, comes down to moments. The moments and the decisions we make in those moments. The rest of our life is just filling space between these moments. I'm in one of those moments right now. In your last moment. I see my death clearly depicted on the dashboard in front of me. She says my single-engine Cessna Centurion will stay in the air for a few more seconds, maybe half a minute or more, and then drop to the ground half a mile below like the proverbial rock. There's no magic rabbit I can pull out of a hat, no MacGyver-style trick I can perform using rubber bands and plastic glue to somehow keep my little plane in the air. Below me is just rough terrain, probably Gilmer County in northeast Georgia. A few minutes ago, I flew over the lights of the small town and administrative center of over 20,000 people, Ellijay. It's too late to turn back, and even if I could, I don't think I'd find a suitable landing spot. The entire county is filled with rivers and national forests. There is not one really good place for a controlled emergency landing. I must be approaching the edges of the Chattahoochee National Forest. If I try to turn or fly straight, I will still fall into the wilderness no matter what I do. Now I hope my Sunday school teachings about heaven are true, but I have my doubts. I always had doubts, although I always hid them from my family and loved ones. I would call myself an agnostic, but deep down I know that I am an atheist. After that, there is nothing. There will be a moment of pain, just a moment, hopefully, and then nothing. Like a candle in the wind, Lewis Walters and everything he knew and saw and loved and was for the last 34 years will simply disappear into the ether. I'm a lawyer, don't even try. I've heard every lawyer joke ever told, and I've made up a few myself. I wonder if it's too late to make a final contract, a deal with God to spare me if he's up there and I come out of this alive, but I already know the answer. A few more seconds passed as I frantically fiddled with the radio control. The only thing worse than contemplating my impending doom was the thought that I would die without saying a word to anyone I loved or cared about. I'll just disappear, and they'll never know who or what I was thinking about in those last moments. I've recently gotten back into music after years of addiction to talk radio. One of the songs, Live Like You're Dying, has the line, "Who would you call one last goodbye?" I was listening to it on my iPod just a few minutes ago to pass the time on a boring drive from court in Tennessee to a client on the way back to Jacksonville, Florida, where I was born and raised. I think about this line very hard now because it has gone from being an idle thought to the most important question in my life. Another thought in my head that is quite strange, or maybe not so strange, is a comic book. Besides being a latecomer to music, I have also loved comics, science fiction, and fantasy since childhood. One of the greatest comic book series ever made, and in my opinion, the best comic book movie ever made, is called Watchmen. It's a coming-of-age superhero story, and one of the characters, the only real superhero, is Dr. Manhattan. Through a typical comic book accident, he gained godlike powers, which is fine, but what always fascinated me was that he stood outside of time. For him, every moment, past, present, and future, is now. He sees them all at the same time. I'm not Dr. Manhattan, but in a way, when I look at my death, I see time the same way. Even sitting in the tiny cockpit and looking at the instruments, as the rain hits the grayish cockpit windshield and the wind rocks the small plane, I also. Driving my 2007 Escalade. I turn toward the gate of the Queens Harbor Golf Club and condominium community and wave to the guard on duty at the gate. This is some new guy I haven't seen before. Usually Black Sam or Spaniard Eduardo work there. He asks me to show my ID, and I ask him where the regular guys are. Oh, Sam caught one of those stomach viruses. It was sudden. They had to call me back from my day off. And Eduardo's father died yesterday. He went to his family in Puerto Rico. I don't think about it anymore. I can't wait to get home and take a hot bath. I had just flown in from New York as the trial ended after both sides in a particularly nasty multimillion-dollar divorce. As a lawyer who makes money from broken hearts and dysfunctional families and companies, it's always depressing when a happy ending suddenly appears and slaps you in the face. I would have called Norman, my partner in our small firm, but it was Friday, and he told me he was going to turn off his cell phone early. "Hot date," was all he said, but I could hear the smile in his voice. He's a ladies' man, always has been since we started working together 10 years ago after graduating from University of Florida Law School. I've lost count of how many secretaries, paralegals, journalists, waitresses, female judges, female police officers he's slept with, sometimes dating 3 or 4 of them at a time, usually without their knowledge of each other's existence. I was always quite happily married to Mona, but even if I was prone to cheating, I got tired just watching Norman run from flower to flower, leaving his mark well. The analogy breaks down here, but anyway, I got tired just watching him juggle women. It amazed me how he even managed to do this so many times a week. Mona Walters, formerly Harold, tall, 5'10", brunette with long hair, a decent bust, and a butt that I once thought should have been insured for at least $10 million. We met in law school, and she actually got her law degree and worked for a while after we started dating. But after the wedding, when I started making decent money, she decided to become the queen of volunteers. She was involved in everything. Of course, her contacts helped our business, and after we found out we couldn't have children, and we mostly didn't want to adopt, volunteering filled a void in her life. I was very busy and only occasionally caught myself thinking that I was looking at my friends' children and missing what we would never have. We had a pretty hot sex life when we got married, but we were young. As I grew older and became more immersed in my work, mostly to compensate for the energy Norman spent chasing women, my communication with Mona became less and less frequent. She seemed to derive most of her pleasure from doing good deeds and such nonsense, and became increasingly tired when I tried to cuddle her late at night. Our sex life never ended, it just petered out. In short, I knew from experience that Mona would most likely be at some charity event and would probably not be too worried when I returned. When I turn the corner and see our 2-story house, I am surprised that the lights on the second floor are on. I'm even more surprised when I get out of the car and look into our 2-car garage, which turns out to be occupied by 2 cars. One is Mona's sporting Mustang. The other surprise, is my faithful partner's SUV. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I am an attorney, and although I do not specialize in divorce, I do encounter it, so I can't be called naive. Like you, the first thought that came to my mind was not a pleasant one. But then, feeling a pain I didn't expect to feel, I take a deep breath and consider my options. It could have been something really bad, but it could also be quite innocent. Norman had been my partner for a long time. I considered him a friend, and as far as I could tell, I thought Mona at least cared about me, even if we didn't share that white-hot passion of our early years. Norman's date might have fallen through. Mona might not have an event that evening, and maybe they were just drinking and talking, or maybe they were having dinner together. Despite everything you read in sex stories and my experience as a lawyer, every time a man and a woman meet, they don't necessarily automatically go to bed and start having sex with great excitement. I can't deny the nervousness as I unlock the front door and quickly punch in the alarm code. I don't think anything is going on, but I'm not sure. Even if it was innocent, the alarm going off would probably scare them both to death. I put my suitcase in the living room. The lights on the first floor are on, but that doesn't matter. We almost always leave it on. I wonder why they are not here in the living room, but we have a living room on the second floor where there is a stereo system and a large TV. I hear music from above. I almost turn around as I place my hand on the ladder to climb up. If something is going on, let's call a spade a spade. If my wife is upstairs having sex with my partner, do I want to know? If I left and came back tomorrow, I would still have the marriage and work partnership that made me rich and happy. If I learn something I don't want to know, then I'll have to do something and my life will change dramatically. I discovered that I hated change. I'm thinking about it some more. She has always been a good wife in many ways. Do I love her? I haven't thought about it for years. I think yes. This weird pain I feel in my stomach wouldn't be here if I didn't have some feelings for it. If she's cheating on me and it's just for sex, maybe I can spice up our relationship. Or I'll find some divorcee or secretary to drag me into bed and boost my ego in order to come to terms with her infidelity. I place my hand on the stairs again and begin to slowly climb. I'm not even sure why I'm going upstairs. It would be much more logical to just leave and keep your life as it is, but I still climb the stairs. Then I found myself on the second floor. On one side is the living room. The lights are on, but the music is coming from another room. Our bedroom. There's music playing there. And other sounds. I'm getting more and more sick. Probably ate something wrong on the flight home. It's like a scene from a stupid horror movie. You know how helpless teenagers run toward a maniac with a big knife, and you scream at them to run the other way, you stupid people, but they don't listen and run to their doom. I try to tell myself, don't open the door, don't open the door, don't open the door, but no, I open the door. Only the lamp on the bedside table by the window is on, casting a pale light on the scene in front of me. But that's enough, and I suddenly realize that I really love my unfaithful, cheating wife. It's true, as they say, you don't know what you have until you lose it. I had a wife whom I loved, although I forgot about it. But now I don't have it anymore, and I never will. They don't look at me. They are too engrossed in what they are doing. Mona has her eyes closed, like she's in pain. Norman is looking at something on the ceiling, I think. They are naked on our bed, on my bed. It's like I turned on the sound and suddenly I heard their voices. Oh, 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 God, honey, baby, harder, harder, so good. So corny. Why the hell can't people who have sex come up with something better? Then why the hell aren't you married to Norman, Mona? I say this in a calm tone, and it takes time for them to realize it. Now, I regret not bringing a video camera. The look on their faces when they realize what they've heard, and that I'm standing next to them would probably win me a $100,000 prize in America's funniest home video competition. Norman's mouth is simply open. Mona opens her eyes, turning to me, then closes them. It's priceless. Norman's movement stopped. Wanting to be polite, I say, "It looks like I interrupted you. Go ahead and finish. When you're ready to talk, I'll be in the living room. You must know this place well, Norman, obviously." I stand there for a moment, and suddenly Mona pushes Norman back. She opens her eyes for a moment, looks at me with an expression that, after 10 years of marriage, I can't read, and rolls off the bed and runs to the bathroom. She walks into the bathroom, and I hear the door close, and then the sound of vomiting. What's wrong with her? Just seeing me, she immediately threw up. Now I understand that we had serious problems in our marriage, but this is an insult to injury. Norman leans back against the wall. Lou I mean you, Mona. I don't understand how you can charge $200 an hour with your public speaking skills, Norman. Lou, you know, that's not what it looks like. You might think, Norman, it looks like you have my wife with her active participation. He's desperately trying to pull himself together. I know it's stupid, Lou. I mean, it just happened. None of us wanted this to happen. We thought you would stay in New York, but my date fell through. Mona called and said her event was canceled. We were just going to have a couple glasses of wine, and we had too much to drink. And it's my fault, Lou. You know me, I'm an idiot when it comes to women, and Mona is so damn sexy. Blame me. Oh, I blame Norman. Believe me, I do. So this is the first time this has happened. This is the first time you two have betrayed me, so to speak. He's almost pathetic, so eager to feed me these lies. Oh yeah, boy. We, believe it or not, Lou, we're friends. I would never have set my sights on Mona if I hadn't been drunk and excited about a failed date. The sounds of vomiting have stopped, but there is silence from the bathroom. Mona, you seem to be doing better. Come out. We need to talk. Silence. I keep my tone calm and conversational, but I can't hide the hint of anger in my voice. Mona, if you don't get out of this damn bathroom in 5 goddamn seconds, I'll start breaking down the door, and even if I can't, I'll make such a damn noise that the police will be called, and pretty soon all your high-ranking friends will hear how you cheated on your husband with his partner. I give her 15 seconds, and then the door opens and she comes out. She found a robe, so she is no longer naked and doesn't have to hide her private parts from her husband. She walks carefully, as if through a minefield, until she reaches the bed, then realizes that Norman is still there, and almost falls when she steps back to sit on the chair next to the nightstand. She doesn't look me in the eye. Look at me. She keeps her head down. Look at me, you fucking cheater. Look at your faithful husband, bitch. She raises her head, and I understand that there are no tears. She's upset because I interrupted her sex and has probably already realized that our marriage is over, but she's not upset about what I did to me. Norman says this was the first time. It just happened because you were alone and started drinking. He says it's all his fault. She looks at him, and he clearly begs her to confirm his story. She shakes her head. She tells him, not me. Norman, don't be such a damn fool. He's an idiot, but not that stupid. He hurt us. Then she looks at me. We've been sleeping for a year now. Almost every time you left and every time you were busy in business, we could meet. I decided that this bitch will never see how much she tore my heart, how much she hurt me. I will leave with pride if nothing else, and I will make sure these cheaters never forget me. Why? She looks at me and smiles, and I realize that not only do I no longer love her, I hate her with burning rage. Just look at him, Lou. He's so much bigger than you, and he's truly a much better lover than you've ever been. You've probably noticed that I'm no longer interested in you. I really didn't need your clumsy attempts. And all our years of marriage meant absolutely nothing, Lou. Have you ever heard the old saying, "What have you done for me lately?" You weren't bad, not very good, but at least you tried when we got married. But for most of our marriage, you didn't even try. You are pathetic. You disgusted me. Norman starts saying something, and I say, "Shut up, Norman. Okay, Mona, this is a direct conversation. Thank you for making it clear where I stand. I could argue with your interpretation. It's hard to be really hot or bossy when your wife treats you like a piece of furniture, and as far as turning you over, I've never really been into spousal abuse, and I didn't know it turned you on." I rub my chin as if I think for a minute, then say, "I'm leaving now. I don't feel safe falling asleep next to both of you. But now I understand how you could cheat and not be afraid of getting caught. Norman, you paid the security guards at the entrance to warn you if I arrived, right? Unfortunately, you didn't deal with the new guard. There was a new guy tonight, and he didn't know he had to warn you. And it makes me realize that there will be enough endings for me to find evidence of your betrayal. Mona, I will find the judge who was burned by his cheating wife, and I will tear you to shreds. No alimony, minimum of my assets. You were a lawyer once, so I'm sure you can find a job somewhere, probably at Norman's new firm. But your volunteering days are over. Plus, I will do my best to spread the word about your activities, so you may not be so welcome in polite society." She just looks at me. I'm sure she already understood this. She was always smart. In fact, the best in its class. Just below me. I reached out to my ex-partner and friend. "As for you, old buddy, I know this lawyering thing was never your goal. It has always been a means to an end. You are a political animal. I know you've been grooming the Hunts, the big banking family, for years to support your campaign for state's attorney. I know you've been hitting on that busty Gail Hunt who runs the bank, but I doubt she'd ever get involved with a freak like you. Well, you should know that the Conti and their entourage are people with high moral principles. This comes from their late grandfather who started their business. When this scandal comes to light, I think your chances of getting any money from the Hunts will be zero. So, as long as you continue to sleep with my wife, who, by the way, is no longer as young and beautiful as you usually prefer, you can forget about your political dreams." Mona stands up and throws off her robe. Her body still looks amazing. "So this is your revenge, you pathetic little coward. Will you make me go back to work? And you'll make Norman look harder for money for his political career. I shudder to think what you would do if you were really angry. Would you cut us some paper or something?" She comes up to me, her breasts bouncing, and stands there with her hands on her delicious hips. You want to know why I slept with Norman? That's why. You have no blood in your veins, you pathetic fool. Any normal man would have kicked Norman's ass. Any normal man would either beat me up or throw me on the bed and beat my brains out. But oh no, not you. You just stand there calm, cool, and collected when you find out your wife has been cheating on you for a year. You don't scream, you don't swear, you don't cry. And that's because you really don't care. You never loved me, really. It was just a marriage that allowed you to have as much sex as you wanted without having to woo some poor girl and woo her. I'm proud of myself because I managed to smile at her, and I love the look on her face when my words reach her mind. I always knew you were a smart girl, Mona. No, I don't love you. Looking back, I realized that I never loved. That's why it was so easy to let everything go, because deep down I always didn't care. Being married to you was easier than getting divorced. I turn and walk towards the door, but I need to make one last lunge. She has a strange expression on her face, and since I now know she doesn't care about me, it's hard to tell why she looks so unhappy. I really don't care that you two had sex, but I'm sure too many people already know about this. I will not allow myself to be the butt of jokes, the stupid husband whose wife and partner laugh while they cheat on him among our friends, other lawyers, people we work with. I'm going to divorce you, Mona, and I'm going to do everything I can to destroy you, Norman, to save my pride. That's the only reason I care about both of you. Now I hope you have a really miserable, short, shitty life. Bye. I'm still frantically fiddling with the radio control, trying to find someone, anyone. The rain is getting heavier, which will ruin the already weak radio signal. The wind begins to toss the light Cessna like a shuttlecock. It's almost dark, and in a few minutes I'll be running blindly towards the ground. I have no hope of survival anymore. This is a tough little bird. Made in 1984, so it's a quarter of a century old, but it's been well maintained. But she is not strong enough to survive an unplanned encounter with the ground. Why the fuel gauge shows an empty tank in the middle of nowhere, I will never know. I hope Mom or Cindy, oh hell, she's not my wife, so she won't have a legal case. But Mom can sue the small private airfield company that serviced the Cessna and give them a forensic enema. Someone seriously screwed up. Either they didn't check the fuel gauge to make sure it wasn't reading a false full, causing it to drink air 400 miles from home, or they allowed debris into the fuel lines where it clogged and cut off fuel flow to the engine. I hope Mom enjoys a secure last few years of her life, both from my estate and from a major lawsuit against the airfield. I hope Cindy will forgive me for doing something as stupid as dying 2 weeks before our wedding. God, this is the worst. But all this will continue without me, and now it's all academic. The only thing that really matters, the only thing I can control, is the next few minutes or seconds and whether anyone will hear my last words. Time is changing again. I whisper to Ken Clavius, who imagines me in an endless struggle to rid myself of the presence of my ex-wife in my life. A year has passed. Divorces never last a year. What is she up to again? He purses his lips and smiles. God knows, Lou, when you hired me and told me that your wife is also a lawyer, I thought that might cause a few problems. But it turned into the damn War of the Roses. I'm starting to have nightmares about what she'll come up with next. So far, we've had charges of violence, mental abuse, legal violence, conspiracy, interstate commerce, although I still don't understand her argument on that. And I think the judge doesn't either. The Fourth Amendment, the 14th Amendment, not yet enacted era. Then he looks at me in such a way that I'm almost sure he's not joking. Any chance you'll consider reconciling just to get rid of this damn thing? Not while I have life in me, or, more precisely, over my corpse. Everyone stand up. We get up, and an unfamiliar figure comes out of the judge's chambers through the door. It was not District Court Judge Catherine Holden who presided over most of the proceedings. This is a man I am not familiar with, but I know him. This is Judge Herman Herring, the hanging judge of the Criminal Division. Standing next to him is his bailiff, an ex-convict named Charlie Keyes. He's almost literally the size of a house, and has muscles where most people don't. He is a friend and bodyguard of Herring, who has prosecuted some of the most high-profile criminal cases in the Jacksonville circuit over the past 20 years. But what the hell is Herring doing in a divorce case? Clavius stands up and walks over to Simon. They whisper as Herring goes through the papers. He returns with a surprised look. Herring and Holden were a couple before they split a year ago. She asked him, as a personal favor, to take up this matter. Keyes says she told Herring if she had to listen to another statement from your wife, she felt like she would jump over the bench and strangle her. Verbatim. There's a noise behind me, and when I turn around, I see Mona entering. What's even more annoying is that she insisted on keeping my last name. She is wearing a smart, very legal blue blouse and skirt. It pisses me off that I would still insure her ass for $1 million if I knew what she did to it. She sits down at the table next to me and Clavius. Herring clears his throat and turns to her. Mrs. Walters, I presume. Yes, Your Honor. I am aware of the painfully long history of this case, and I am told that you have another application pending today. This is true? Yes, Your Honor. He gives her the look that is said to turn hardened assassins into sobbing wimps and says, "Could you tell the court the nature of this statement? And please, Mrs. Walters, be brief. You see, hopefully you're close to the local, if not state, record for one of the longest divorce cases in history." Yes, I know, Your Honor. I also know, of course, that you, having been the presiding judge in the Smith-Wright contract murder trial, which lasted 18 months and remains the longest criminal trial outside of a grand jury in this country, understand that sometimes justice must move slowly to achieve fair results. Herring's eyes widen and Keyes can't help but laugh. I sat there dumbfounded. My soon-to-be ex-wife, who had only been a practicing lawyer for a couple of years, had just confused one of the toughest criminal judges in the country. I think I must have died and gone to hell. Anyway, Your Honor, I have just received new evidence relevant to this case. This is an audio recording. I request permission to reproduce it for this trial. For what purpose? Once it is reproduced, I will submit a statement to the court and a proposal to Mr. Walters. If he accepts it and the court agrees, I think this will finally allow this case to be completed. Clavius puts his head on his hands and says quietly, "Thank God." I nudge him. Ask her what kind of tape she has. Your Honor, can we ask before she tells you the nature of the tape? Mona looks at me with a smile, like a cat looking at a canary about to be swallowed. It's a recording of a telephone conversation between Mr. Walters and his mother, Mrs. Justina Walters, almost a year old. I know what it is, and Clavius can't stop me from jumping up and heading for this. She can't play that tape, I scream. It's a privileged, private conversation. I don't know how she got it, but it's not hers. I walk up to her desk, reaching for the tape, my arms pinned to my sides, no way to free myself. I feel Case's huge body behind me. There's a commotion, and I hear Herring yelling, "Mr. Clavius, bring your client to his senses, or I'll send him to jail. Charlie, get him back to the table." Simon sits me down at the table next to Clavius and stands over me to make sure I don't move. Despite its size, I'm thinking about kicking it in the groin and incapacitating it long enough to get to the tape. Holden asks Mona, "Do you have the legal authority to have possession of this tape, Mrs. Walters?" She hands over the document. I have a signed and notarized statement from Mrs. Walters, who overheard and recorded the conversation, stating that she is providing the tape with her permission. As you know, Florida law allows a person to record a telephone conversation without the knowledge or consent of the other party. Good old mom. Let me see it, Herring says, but I interrupt him. Don't worry, Your Honor. I admit it's from my mother. Let her play the damn tape. Herring looks at me strangely, then asks in a quieter voice, "Do you want us to listen to it in the office, just you and the lawyer?" Who cares? No, I know what's in there. It doesn't matter who else hears it. It won't make a difference. Mrs. Walters, play the tape. Loud enough for me to hear it. My hearing isn't what it was when I was 20. Yes, Your Honor. Is that you, Lewis? Did you finally call back? Where have you been? I've been calling you all day. Probably in a few bars, getting completely wasted, Mom. Honestly, I'm sorry. Lewis, what the hell is going on in there? I got a call from Mona, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She said you left her and were getting a divorce? I can't believe it. I do. But why? I thought you were happy. I know it's terrible that you can't have kids, but you got over it. I left her because I caught her having sex with another man. Lewis Walters, watch your language. I'm your mother, and I refuse to believe she did this. Sorry, Mom, but it's the truth. I caught her in bed with Norman, my partner, and she told me they were in a relationship for a whole year. A whole damn year. Not a casual affair, not a temporary fling. A whole year. I don't know what to say, son. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry too. I'm sorry too. She said she still loves you and doesn't want to lose you. How can you love someone and have sex with another man for a whole year? And she already lost me. There's no coming back, Mom. I know you liked her. Hell, I loved her, but there's no coming back. Son, Lewis, she said she thought you were divorcing her because you didn't love her anymore. In fact, she said she thought you never loved her, that you married her for the sake of sex, for convenience. Sneaky lying bitch. Did you tell her that, Lou, that you never loved her? Yes, he said, Mom, right after she told me that she had great sex with my partner for a year, and that I am not a man, and that I no longer suit her. She laughed at me, Mom. She was laughing. You would be proud of me. I didn't strangle her. I didn't take the gun and blow her brains out, although I had thoughts. I just lied and told her that I never loved her. I wanted to hurt her the way she hurt me. It's not that I understand why it hurts her, because it's impossible to love someone and do what she did. I don't understand anything, Lou, but when she said she loved you, I believed her. Then if she loves me, and I know I love her even if I don't want to, we're two really messed up people. Look, Mom, I can't talk anymore. I'll call you later. There is absolute silence in the hall. I have never been in a completely silent courtroom. I've never been around so many people who tried so hard not to feel sorry for me. I feel like I want to crawl under the table and hold my breath until everything disappears. I want to hate my mother, but I understand why she did it. She was a mother, trying to the last to help her son. When I called her, the system automatically recorded the conversation. She picked up the phone after the recording started and continued recording our conversation. When she realized she had the recording, her motherly mind began to think of how she could use it to bring her two favorite people back together, despite themselves. I know she put off giving the tape to Mona because she knew it would hurt me. But when she realized that we would never be together again, she gave it to Mona. Nuclear bomb of divorce proceedings, but she won't be able to help me here. I force myself to look at Mona. I don't know what I expect to see. Celebration. Revenge. She proved she won. I loved her, but she clearly didn't care. Point for her. Big deal. I break the silence. Congratulations, Mona. If I haven't said it before, you're a damn better lawyer than I ever thought. Maybe you'll win today, maybe you'll get your ruling, whatever that means. Maybe you'll hang on for another 10 years. This is the case, but one thing will not change. I will never take you back. We will never be together again. She ignores me and talks to Herring. Your Honor, may I now submit my statement? Herring looks at his papers as if he is embarrassed by what he has heard. He was no doubt more used to hearing confessions of murder than this kind of romantic nonsense. Yes, continue. She gets up and walks over to the bench. Your Honor, I admit that I put forth every possible obstacle to prevent my husband from divorcing me. I was probably wasting the court's time and resources, but I was fighting for something very dear to me, for the man I love and for the chance to have a life with him again. Without further details, as the record suggests, I engaged in a year-long affair with another man. I have no excuse for this, although I had reasons. I thought my marriage was a lie and a deception, and that the man I loved didn't love me anymore, if at all. There was another man, a fascinating and wonderful lover, who wanted me. I gave myself to him. When my husband caught us, I said what he mentioned on the tape. I said that to try to hurt him, to make him angry. Because I was making one last, final attempt to make him show at least some feelings for me. I thought that if these statements did not anger him, did not cause him to demonstrate any desire for me, then I was right all along, and we really were no longer in a marriage. You heard his words on the recording. He told me that he never loved me, that he didn't love me. He confirmed my fears. But as the recording also confirms, these words were a lie. I have no confidence that he will ever forgive me for what I did, but now I know that despite his words, he truly loved me. I think he still loves me. All I ask, Your Honor, is that you require Mr. Walters to complete 10 counseling sessions with me before divorcing. If at the end of these 10 sessions he still wants a divorce, I will agree to the divorce. No more fighting, no more statements. I'll just leave. Herring looks at me. Okay, I agree. 10 sessions. Agreed. Clavius mutters quietly, Thank you, God, thank you. Thank you. Static interference, and then, I hear you faintly. You say that you are going. Where? Coordinates. I clutch the radio in my left hand and try to physically hold the steering wheel with my right. Almost dark. I see more silhouettes than actual objects, but I know that I have passed the top of a high hill to my left. My speed is still over 90 miles per hour, even though I've kept the throttle down to keep the wings level. I see what appear to be trees below, so close I can almost see their tops. Maybe 50-75 feet below. I imagine what it would be like to hit those trees at 90 miles per hour in my Escalade, and this Centurion is not nearly as tough as my Escalade. All that will remain of the plane and me are small pieces scattered everywhere. I have a slightly better chance of surviving a fall from this height than from a half mile, but the downside is that when the gas runs out, I only have a few seconds. Not a minute, but just a few seconds. About 30 miles south-southeast of Alleyway, just entered the Chattahoochee Forest. I'm Lou Walters from Jacksonville. Got it? 30 miles south-southeast of Alleyway. Waters. No time. Write this down, please. Speak. In the next seconds, I look deep inside myself, where the truth usually hides from you. I just don't have time to lie to myself. I understand what the truth is and say a few words that I think I can say. There's a cracking sound, and then the single engine stops, and all you can hear is the howling of the wind and the sound of heavy rain hitting the windshield of the cabin, and then the family consultant is a woman. Dr. Marilyn Myers of Family Counseling Services, an independent firm under contract with the Duval County Family Court. She's tall, blonde, and looks a bit like the attractive, but evil cheerleading coach from that TV show Glee. Always wondered why she never got romantic roles. She's tall, beautiful, sexy, and has lips to die for. But she never gets those damn roles, only funny ones. Maybe she's so damn good that guys are scared. Dr. Myers isn't that sexy, but for a woman who must be in her late 50s, she's pretty damn good. I mentally undress her with my eyes to kill time while she continues to talk. Mr. Walters, may I have your opinion? Myers sounds slightly annoyed. I think she has a right to this. I was not the best test subject for these 6 sessions. Sorry, Dr. Myers. I got distracted. I hope you don't mind. I was actually thinking about how hot you are. Never asked, but are you married? Her eyes widen, and I'm sure she doesn't hear that phrase often from the couples she counsels. Mona sits up straight in her comfortable leather chair next to me and looks at me with hatred. If looks could kill. Mr. Walters, this is, unfortunately, completely inappropriate. Thank you for the compliment, but let's get back to. I have to ask, if you are married, is your husband older or younger than you? Alive and well, or a typical older man? She frowns, and then for a moment there is a smile that she clearly hates. Mr. Walters, enough please. You don't think I know what you're doing. This is just another cheap trick to piss off your wife and score points in this ongoing battle you've been fighting since the moment you walked in here. In fact, it is you who are leading. Mrs. Walters appears, and I believe her, to be making a good faith attempt to try to save your marriage, or, if that is not possible, at least return the relationship to friendship. You, on the other hand. Her voice fades then. Let's try again, please, Mr. Walters. And by the way, yes, I'm married. My husband is the coach of the Lehigh Commodores football team, and he's very strong, very big, and very, very energetic. I swear to God, she turns in her chair and moves her legs in her relatively modest skirt so that I can see the seductive look at her nylon legs, licks her lips, and then looks at the papers in front of her. Mona looks like she's eating a lemon. I love it. We discussed your wife's feelings after you learned that she could not bear you children and refused to consider adoption, that you somehow blamed her for this shortcoming in your marriage, and that your sex life had become a place where you took your frustrations out on her. I think we're talking about passive-aggressive revenge. You just pulled away from her. Do you think there's any truth to her opinion? I look down at the floor to avoid their eyes. This whole thing is such a damn waste of time, and I can't wait to drop the bomb on Mona. But I'll wait and let the tension build before I take it out on my loving, future ex-wife. Perhaps I'm not a psychiatrist. Looking back, yes, it hurt. I was an only child. I wanted children. I always thought it would be nice to have a boy and a girl. I don't think I ever blamed Mona. Perhaps thoughts about sex made me a little sad. Perhaps I wasn't as hot as I might have been under other circumstances. But basically, I was working 80, 90 hours a week, 7 days a week, trying to grow our business, to give her the life I thought she wanted, and pulling the weight for this loser. My friend, I knew that all his attention was focused on sexual pleasure, so I had to bear the brunt of the company, but I thought that he was my friend since college. So I worked so much that I hardly ever thought about sex, let alone have the energy to do it. Myers taps his pencil on the table. Mr. Walters, you don't seem to have given much thought to your emotions, to why you feel the way you do. Feel why you do what you do. What the hell does that mean? Don't be offended. This is not an insult. You are a very hard-working, goal-oriented person. You set goals for yourself a long time ago, found the woman you loved, married her, and then focused all your attention on achieving success in your career. People like you, a lot of... In terms of who you are and why you do what you do, I think you've been on autopilot for a long time. You told me in one of our first meetings, remember when you were talking about how you found your wife and partner, you were surprised how much her betrayal hurt you. You said you forgot that you loved her. So what? You described most of the lawyers and half of those living in the United States. I know, but think about it. If you forgot that you loved this woman, how did you expect her to understand it? You had a marriage, an arrangement that allowed both to share one house, share expenses, share sex when both were in the mood. But over time, you spent less and less time together. You worked, she filled her time with volunteer activities. The marriage continued like a perfectly oiled machine, but you spent so little intimate moments together that you were able to push your feelings for her into the depths of your mind. What, you thought that you could someday relax, start having breakfast together and dinner by candlelight, turning off your BlackBerry and pager? You would remember, and she would remember, that there was once a day when you wanted her so badly that gave up the opportunity to sleep with every other woman in the world in order to possess her. I repeat, Mr. Walters, if you forgot, why did you expect her to remember? I look at Mona and try to imagine her as a particularly ugly witch with a huge wart on her nose sitting in her place. I guess I couldn't, did I, Doctor? And she clearly forgot too. At least, Doctor, I didn't sleep with my husband's best friend. Wait, that didn't sound right. I didn't sleep with other women. I push the mental image away because I want to see her eyes and face when I say what I'm about to say next. You probably know that Norman slept with anything that went around. Our secretaries, paralegals, judges' secretaries, policewomen, reporters, waitresses. What you don't know, you stupid bitch, is that I might be next to him. I ate at the same damn restaurants. I flirted with the same damn secretaries. I interrogated policewomen who showed their legs and left their home numbers on pads on my desk with a heart and the words "call me." I could have slept with 50 women while we were married if he wanted. Norman is not a god. I sent some women who wanted me to him to get rid of them. Even though you were a cold, sexless bitch, I told myself that you were still my wife. I took an oath, and remember, I'm a court officer. I take oaths seriously. You're a lawyer. You know all about oaths and contracts and about what they mean. But you threw your vow and your honor into the toilet when you started having my partner. She looked at me carefully. Her eyes were fixed on mine. It was as if she was trying to evaluate the veracity of my words. She closes her eyes, and I can't believe the tears start streaming down her face. I was literally speechless. I can't remember the last time I saw her cry. Certainly not since she tore my heart out that night with Norman. Why now? Why now, you stupid bitch? I want to scream at her. Why now, when everything is lost, when you have destroyed everything? Why are you showing any human emotions now? I cannot wait anymore. I'll go crazy. I'll make a fool of myself if I don't say what I wanted to say this whole session. I stand up, catching them both off guard. Dr. Myers, I know this is unorthodox, but I need to do and say something. I will continue these sessions as ordered by the court, but there is something I want you and my wife to know. I think it will shed new light on what we're doing here. She gives me a warning look, but nods her head. I walk to the door of her office and go out into the reception area. She's sitting there. I sign to her, and she gets up and walks towards me. I kiss her and smell her perfume, and the day gets better. We head back to Myers' office. She looks at us like I've grown a second head. Mona just stares, her expression unintelligible. Dr. Myers, Mona, this is Cindy Matthews. Cindy puts one slender hand on mine and says in her soft southern accent, Carter, honey. Now Cindy Carter. I scolded myself. I had to remember. Sorry, Cindy Carter. Matthews was her last name after marriage. She just got divorced. I turn it slightly so Mona can see it better. She's a natural blonde, 5.5 feet tall, with breasts maybe a little smaller than Mona's, but she's got 5 years to go and her breasts look very perky in the signature Carter family t-shirt she's wearing. She's wearing jeans, which she almost always wears, and her ass rivals that of my loving wife. And she's so damn beautiful. I want to spin her around in front of Mona to rub her nose with the fact that I moved on. You're right, Mr. Walters. This is extremely unorthodox. Who is Miss Carter, and why did you bring her here? I told you that I would follow the court order and attend 10 sessions, but I think it's only fair to update you and Mona on developments that relate to what we're doing here. Mona knows. I said she was smart. The whole point of these sessions is to determine if it's possible for Mona and I to get back together. I've told her over and over again that it won't happen, but for some twisted reason she doesn't believe me. Well, believe it, Mona. I've been dating Cindy for a month now. We've become very serious and very attached to each other. I know it's only a short period of time, but the chances of a real commitment are there, and I want to explore this possibility. Let Cindy tell you how she feels. Cindy looks at Mona, and sadness appears on her beautiful face. Mrs. Walters, I argued with Lou about doing this. I told him it was cruel and unnecessary, but he finally convinced me that you deserve the truth. I'm not here to hurt you. Trust me, I know where you are right now. I got divorced 6 months ago. He was a real jerk. He only married me for my parents' money. They own Carter Paving, which is a big paving company here in Jacksonville. But even being a jerk, I still had feelings for him. It took me 2 years to finally break free. I wasn't looking for your husband, and he wasn't trying to pick me up. Andy, my ex, started harassing me again, and I went to court to get help from my brother-in-law Lyle. He's a volunteer there, but he wasn't there that day. And I got lost, I admit. Then I saw Lou at the elevators. He looked like he was there for a reason, and I just asked him to help me find the right office. He was so kind that when I finished and walked out, I saw him at the snack counter. I stopped to thank him again, and we started talking, and we've seen each other almost every night since then. She blushes. I mean every night, all night. It sounds terrible, but there was an instant connection between us. I didn't wanted to have a physical relationship with a married man, but he convinced me that it was over between you two. Now she is turning crimson red. I know it hurts you, but you should know this. I think I love him, or I might love him. I know I can't get enough of him in bed. I feel like I was 17, and I never thought that I'll feel it again after Andy. He's so damn good in bed. I can't imagine I can't imagine you giving up on him for another man. Mona just looks at her, then at me. You could be playing me, Lou. You're so smart. She could be the cheap bitch you hired to play your girlfriend, so I'll stop going to these sessions. Check it out, Mona. Use detectives. Her parents are Richard and Ricky Carter, and they own a big paving company on the west side. They're millionaires, and she can take advantage of their money. Her brother is a real estate developer, quite famous. Her son-in-law, Lyle, in addition to volunteering on the court, teaches at Jacksonville University. There are many ways to check it. She's not a fake, and I don't have enough money to pay her for lying about it. Mona looks at me and Cindy with hatred. So you found some bimbo willing to fuck you. Big deal. You're just doing this to get me. You love me, not her. Cindy takes a step towards Mona, and I grab her hand to hold her back. I met her parents and family, and they all told me she was fired. I believe. I don't want a catfight to break out. Or maybe I do, but I don't think Myers will be happy with it. Cindy stops, then gently removes my hand and looks down at Mona. I didn't believe him when he told me what a bitch you were. I thought he was just being bitter, but he was right. I don't understand how he put up with you for so long, and maybe you're right. Maybe he still loves Andy for a long time after I decided to free myself from him. But Lou will be on top of me tonight, and I will be on top of him. And if I can make him love me instead of you, you damn well better believe that. I will do it. She turns around, kisses me, and leaves the office. Myers just sits there with a look of surprise on his face. As you might expect, the rest of the session turns out to be incredibly unproductive. There are many humiliating things that can happen to you in this life, but one of the most humiliating, as I have learned from personal experience, is surviving when you fully expect to die. I make myself as comfortable as I can with a broken right arm, a broken right collarbone, a broken right leg, a removed spleen, a bruised heart, 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and a broken nose. I woke up at Shands Medical Center in Jacksonville, where I was taken when the rescue team found my nearly complete centurion nose down in the mud on the shore of a small lake on the edge of the Chattahoochee National Forest. I come to my senses when I am transported to a private patient ward, we read, for paying patients from the air ambulance. There's a short, bald doctor walking nearby, and when I ask him in disbelief if I'm dead, he just laughs and tells me to never play the lottery because I used up 7 lifetimes of luck in a few seconds in Georgia. Over the next 2 days, the world dissolves into a kaleidoscope of needles and bustling nurses and flashing familiar faces as I drift in and out of consciousness, sometimes because of what they're injecting me with, sometimes because of the needs of my body. I think my mother was there. I can't believe it, but I think I even saw Myers accompanied by her big shadow. I vaguely understand what is happening to me and what happened. I remember a flight from Tennessee that ended in North Georgia. It comes back to me in flashes of sight and sound, sometimes silent pictures and sometimes sounds that I cannot relate to the images. I remember, in pieces, how I felt knowing I was going to die. I remember how scared I was right before the end. I didn't want to leave like a candle in the wind. And I remember how strangely calm I was in the final seconds, hearing the crack and crunch as the centurion burst through the tree branches towards the ground. I don't remember the most important thing, the only thing that would make me truly regret that I didn't die in those moments. This will come back to me later. I began to suspect that something strange was happening in the first few days as I drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes I look up and see a nurse or a couple of nurses looking at me with the strangest expression on their face. I can't figure out what it is, and it's bothering me. One day, the nurse is changing the bandage on my right arm, and she stops for a minute. I look in her direction and see her hands resting on my right arm and shoulder, and she has tears in her eyes. What the hell? I don't know her, and I know for sure that she doesn't know me. Norman had a few nurses, and I met a few through him, but she wasn't one of them, and she's too old anyway. She must be under 50. I would say something, but I don't know what to say. She simply wipes her tears, finishes her work, and leaves. But before she leaves the IQ, where I'm still in, she turns around and gives me that weird look again. 3 days after I was brought in, my mother entered the private ward where I was transferred. She hugs me, fusses and cries, and then cries again. I tell her it's okay. She shouldn't cry anymore. And then, damn it, she bursts into tears again. When I ask her where Cindy is and why my fiancé didn't come to see me, she just sighs, bursts into tears, and runs out of the room. When I call Cindy on her cell phone and then at home, the call goes to voicemail. I leave dozens of messages. There are no answers. I'm starting to think I've entered some strange dimension and found myself in the Twilight Zone, a world where I'm a tragic hero and not a cunning lawyer who was lucky to escape death. The same short, bald doctor appears in my room with newspapers, which he places on the table next to my bed. I look at them, puzzled. There was no TV in my room, and I wasn't conscious long enough to miss it. I haven't been watching the news, although I'm starting to come back to the real world and wonder what happened while I was unconscious and what the reaction was to my little adventure. I'm looking at the guy I nicknamed Baldy after the character he would have played in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. He doesn't have the same starry look that the nurses have, but he's still weird. Then it dawns on me. They really looked at me with loving eyes. Finally, I can name this expression. They looked at me the way teenagers look at rock idols. I'm starting to get scared. Have I really entered the Twilight Zone? I could pretend that a couple of looks could be misinterpreted, but every damn woman in the hospital was looking at me like that. I start to piece together the fragments of memories and everything starts to come together. I somehow became a romantic hero. The nearly middle-aged, blonde, 6-foot man with less than classically defined features, no major movie roles, top 10 music hits, or Super Bowl rings, gets looks from women that he's never gotten in his life. I never even dreamed that a woman would look at me like that. I'm getting scared, I tell Baldy. What's going on here? He looks at me, and I recognize this look, although I have never seen such a combination before. This is pity and envy. A truly strange and disturbing combination, as you will soon discover if you are ever unlucky enough to be the recipient of it. You do not remember? Did I forget something important that happened before I left Tennessee? Something that happened along the way? It can't be something that happened after the crash, can it? There is something. I can almost remember it. What am I trying to remember? He points to the newspapers on the table next to my bed. I look at him questioningly, but he just points at the newspapers and gives me that look again. I reach out with my left hand and take the top newspaper. This is the Florida Times-Union. I check the date. It is dated last Wednesday. Today is Friday. The accident occurred on Monday evening. I scan the first page, reading from top left to bottom right, as always. The headline and photos in the upper left corner of the newspaper catch my attention. I saw an archival photo of myself from an article about my trial a few years ago, and there is a photo of Mona at some social event. She's wearing something revealing and tight, and she looks sexy. She's smiling at someone, not for me, but it's a warm smile. There is a huge headline across the entire top of the newspaper. Heck, war announcements don't get that big of headlines. I love you. I always have loved you. I will always love you. The newspaper falls from my suddenly numb fingers. It feels like your heart is about to jump out of your chest. Can people really lose consciousness? Could I be having a heart attack? My memory of those final moments comes back to me. No wonder I couldn't remember. It feels like someone is tearing my heart out of my chest. Why the hell didn't I just die? Below the headline is an article authored by Carl Cameron, one of the newspaper's best journalists. I know this because he once wrote about me. Harold Grimes was a radio amateur for half a century and heard many unusual messages on his radio. But the call he received Monday night touched him like no other message. The 67-year-old Georgia retiree, a former seaboard coastline engineer, received distress calls, birth and death messages, and emergency notifications. But this, I was watching a rerun of The Fall Guy on TV Land when I heard something, or thought I heard something through the static. We sometimes get calls for help or from planes looking for a place to land. Area to the north of us is quite wild. I played with the radio settings until I got a signal. It was a man, he was screaming. I could make out enough to understand that he was in a private plane and was falling somewhere in the north. It was a bad night, wind and rain, and there were few landing spots. He told me his name was Lewis. Walters, I thought, although I later found out it was Walters. I tried to get the coordinates to help someone find him, but he wouldn't waste his time. He said he didn't have time and asked me to write down his words. He said he had a few seconds left. He seemed desperate. Grimes spoke calmly during the interview. Now he stops, and when he continues, his voice drops to almost a whisper. I wrote down his words without thinking about what he was saying to me. There were just a few words. He said, "Mona, I love you. Always have. Always will. Should have forgiven you. I'm sorry." He stopped talking, and I waited a few seconds, and then asked, Mr. Walters, is there anything else you want to notify?" It was quiet, although I thought I heard something like the snapping of branches. He must have still had the radio on, and then so quiet that I could barely hear him. He said, "That's it," and then there was only interference. I grabbed the phone and called the sheriff's office, knowing they would pass it on. Then I just sat in my chair and read what he asked me to pass on. I'm not a very sensitive person. I don't cry easily. My wife, Louise, used to call me a classic cruelty before she died. But I started thinking about that poor guy out there, alone, in the storm, on the plane going down. He must have thought he wasn't going to make it. It got to me, I tell you. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, thinking about him. This Mona must have been really special to him. You could hear it in his voice. He was crazy about her. And I don't know what she did to him, but whatever it was, he knew he had made a mistake. He didn't forgive her, and now I never can. It moved me to tears, to be honest. Mona turned out to be Mona Harris, the ex-wife of Lewis Walters, the prominent Jacksonville lawyer who conducts a national practice from his Jacksonville office, divorced Miss Harris in a high-profile lawsuit 9 months ago after a nearly year-long legal battle. The divorce was prompted by Miss Harris admitting to a year-long affair with Walters' former partner, Norman Miller. Following his divorce from Miss Harris, Walters announced his engagement to Cindy Roberta Carter, whose parents own and operate Carter Paving. Their wedding was supposed to take place less than 2 weeks after the accident. When Miss Harris was notified of the crash and the message left by Walters, she became insane. A woman who identified herself as Ms. Harris' sister said she was too upset to comment. A family spokesman for Cindy Carter said Miss Carter was also unavailable for comment. The next newspaper is Thursday's New York Post. The headline reads simply, "Pilot's last message, love you always." Chicago Tribune. Pilot cheated on his wife, should have forgiven. New York Times, Friday. A pilot's love story captivates the world. I look at Baldy. It was on Good Morning America, The Today Show, Fox and Friends, whatever. Entertainment Tonight, Leno and Letterman both started it yesterday. They say everyone has their 15 minutes of fame. You've had 96 hours, and it doesn't look like it's going to subside. I rub my forehead, trying to calm the oncoming migraine. A nightmare. Why? What the hell made this story so big? The bald man comes up to me and puts his hand on my shoulder, again giving that look of pity and envy. You're too close to it, Mr. Walters. As soon as the first article came out, and you read Cameron's article, it was picked up by news outlets, and then national newspapers and national television news magazines. Your divorce was in the public domain. Reporters got it, and an audio recording of your conversation with mother. It was compelling. A pilot who thinks he's dying sends a final message of love to the woman who cheated on him, broke his heart, and then spent a year trying to win him back. There were quotes from the trial where you said you'd never take her back. And then, when you thought you were dying, you said you should have. My God, it's better than anything Hollywood could come up with. I look at him and want to cry, although that would make me even more pathetic. So everyone in the civilized world knows the intimate details of my personal life, knows that I was a damn weakling who couldn't satisfy his wife and cried when she left him. Some radio shows did call you a wimp, I admit. I guess because it helps their ratings. But most women eat it up. You didn't know it, but we almost had fights among the young nurses over the right to look after you. So we scheduled you for treatment only for senior nurses. Also, last time we checked, we've received about 20,000 emails, mostly from women who want you to contact them. We've received some photos. Let's just say they're very explicit. I just shake my head. I can't comprehend all this. Anything else? Oh, we've received 200 requests from the media to interview you, and I understand that the bookmakers in Vegas are giving odds of 3 to 2 that you'll end up with Mona and 5 to 1 that you'll end up marrying Cindy Carter. Is my life up for grabs in Vegas? I had a random fantasy of becoming famous one day. Maybe I'll win a national lawsuit, be invited to the post of governor, something like that. But to become famous for being a deluded weakling who could never forget his slutty wife. I moan loudly and Baldy looks worried, thinking I'm in physical pain. It's a shame it's not physical. Suddenly, I understood why Mom burst into tears again when I asked her about Cindy. I close my eyes and want to die again. What was it supposed to be like for her? 2 weeks before our wedding, her fiancé tells the world that he is still in love with his cheating ex. Knowing her character, which this sweet blonde had in spades, I'm surprised she hasn't shown up at the hospital with a gun to kill me for real. As soon as I can get Baldy out the door with a promise to consider doing the first interview, I dial Richard and Ricky at their West Side mansion. He sticks out like a sore thumb among the low-income population on Jacksonville's West Side, but millionaires can bend the rules. I'm not getting voicemail this time. I hear Richard Carter answer the phone with a Georgian accent. Hello. Mr. Carter, this is Lewis. Lewis Walters. I leave it like that, not knowing what the reaction will be. There's a long pause then. Hey, Lewis, how are you? I heard you were pretty hurt. Pretty much, Mr. Carter. Is Cindy there? She's unavailable, Lewis. Unavailable. I'm trying to be polite, son. She's here, but she doesn't want to talk to you right now. I understand, sir. I want you and her to know that I didn't do it intentionally. I would never do it to her. Another long pause follows. Then, you hurt her badly, Lewis. I thought that idiot Andy hurt her badly, but you got under her protection because you're a good guy. She cried for 2 days after she saw the first story. Why did you do this? I need to think about this for a few minutes, but he doesn't hang up. Because everything happened so fast, and I thought I was dying. I didn't have time to think about it. And that means what you said is what you really feel. I don't want this, but don't beat yourself up, Lewis. She always told us that she knew you still had feelings for that woman. She just didn't know they were that deep. I would like to. Let it go, Lewis. It's over. It'll cost us a little for the decorations and food we had to cancel, and the honeymoon tickets and everything, but it's only money. Just don't call here anymore, okay? Mr. Lewis. There's a steely edge to his usually friendly voice as he says, don't call here again. If she ever wants to contact you, she will. Please give her time. And he hangs up. So it surprises the hell out of me when I see her the next day, standing in the doorway of my room. I can't say anything, so I just look at her. A minute later, she enters the room, not taking her eyes off my face. Her eyes are red, like she's been crying a lot. She's still just as beautiful. I tell myself for the millionth time that I'm an idiot. Dad said you called. He didn't mean to be so harsh with you, but he hurts for me. After what I did, I'm surprised he didn't come to me himself. What have you done that's so terrible, Louis? Except tell the truth to the world and to yourself. You still love your ex-wife. That's not a crime. I shouldn't, and I'm not sure I do. I think I went crazy for a few minutes. She sits next to me and takes my hand. I see the sweet curve of her breasts under her blouse, and I think about what a nice ass she is sitting on that chair, and I ask myself how anyone could be so stupid. I remember the nights we spent having sex. She was insatiable, young and enthusiastic, sweet and resilient, and I can't think of a single wish she wouldn't gladly agree to. She was right when she told me that you loved her many months ago. And when you thought you were dying, she was the only one you thought about, wasn't she? I want to lie to her, but the words get stuck in my throat. It's okay, she says softly. Damn, I hate this. Tears appear in her eyes. You were married to her for 10 years. She was the woman you wanted to make the mother of your children. When she cheated on you, she almost destroyed you. She has your heart. As you said, always loved, always will, was just a way to forget. I squeeze her hand with my good left hand. I wish it was you, honey. I wish to God it was you who I love. But like you said, people can learn not to love someone. You did it with Andy. Can you give me a little more time? I want to be with you. She removes her hand, shaking her head furiously. No, Louis, I've been through it. I'm not going to marry a man who doesn't love me. Andy told me we could make things right. He was a creep. You're a good guy, but neither of you ever loved me. She gets up from the chair. She's still crying. What I don't understand, Lou, what I really don't understand is that I'm a good person. I really think I am. Never consciously tried to hurt anyone. Tried to be the best Christian I could. And my first husband is a jerk, and the man I want to marry can never love me. What am I doing wrong? She turns to leave and then stops. It wasn't a good year for the Carter sisters. Do you remember my sister Diana? You met her and her husband Lyle at a family party in Palatka. While you were in the hospital, all hell broke loose. Lila left her and is going to file for divorce. We found out that this stupid bitch has been sleeping with another man for years, a guy she dated before Lyle came to town. I remember them. They seemed like a good couple. Although if I had to guess who was cheating on who, I'd put my money on Lyle. He was one of those guys who looked too good. Why are girls who treat guys like crap, cheat on them, hurt them, make them choke, and no one wants good girls? I don't know, baby. Find a good guy and ask him. I understand that there is a lot of this around, but seriously, you just got unlucky. There are a million guys who would make a good boyfriend or husband and would jump at the opportunity to be with you. You are wonderful. Don't put yourself down. You just need to get out there and start looking again. She looks at me again. She nods and says, I could do that. I will have many chances. What? For the first time since she entered my room, a smile bloomed on her face. In the 4 days since the first story about you and Mona was published, in which I was mentioned and a photo of me was published, I have received about 4,000 letters from guys wanting to console me. My mom keeps telling me that I should start answering some of them. Do you think I should? And for the first time, I see that there may be something good in this media storm that has engulfed my life. Time passes. I give dozens of interviews and try not to repeat my answers. I was paid a fair amount of money for a series of interviews and the rights to my story for a TV movie, which allows me to pay the hospital generously enough for them to tell the story. And then, of course, she comes back into my life. I was waiting for her. She's like another shoe that's always ready to drop. It's already been 7 days since I was taken on a gurney to the hospital from an ambulance helicopter, and I'm starting to go crazy from idleness and the thirst to return to life. I notice that when I watch the midday news, the nurses are fussing more than usual. She then appears in the doorway, tall as always, with a new hairstyle that I don't remember, reminiscent of the 17th century fashion at the court of Louis Roman XIV, with lots of curls. She looks almost 6 feet tall in heels. She's wearing a turtleneck, which is fashionable and practical since it's about 40 degrees Fahrenheit outside. She's wearing green pants, and I must still be that same girl but lover because I can't take my eyes off her. She didn't go shopping. I'm flattered that she took the trouble to dress up. Our eyes meet. There's a mocking look in her eyes, as if she knows a joke that I don't know about. I feel embarrassed. I feel naked in front of her. I don't have any more secrets, or at least not the biggest one. "Wow, you know how to cause a commotion," she says, wriggling, entering the room. "No one walks like that naturally. She must be training. Not that that was my goal. Everything got out of control. You are a master of understatement. Yesterday, I was at Publix, and a sweet old lady came up to me in the cereal aisle and wordlessly slapped me in the face. I look at her in bewilderment. She called me a liar and a bitch, and said I should be ashamed of myself for betraying the wonderful Mr. Walters. Well, she smiles. I know if the shoe fits. I also had to remove my phone number from the directory. On the other hand, I got half a dozen new clients just because they heard our story, and I got calls asking for interviews from Australia to Brazil. Our divorce actually launched my practice, but you can't buy that kind of advertising for $1 million. Of course, I have to put up with slaps from old ladies in supermarkets, but nothing in this life comes for free. She looks at the chair next to my bed. I was freed from most of the tubes and monitors I was hooked up to. I still have a heart rate monitor, but other than that, I'm pretty much a free man. Can I sit down? What if I say no? Leave. She smiles, and my heart wants to break again. How could she be a cheater when she has such a smile? I'll sit down anyway, because we both know that you don't want me to leave. Don't get arrogant about the last message I sent you. Is it the season for Freudian slips, dear? You just can't help yourself, can you? I have to admit, I'm not sure how to handle this. With what? Most married women, if they are lucky, spend their whole lives thinking or hoping that their husbands love them for working hard, taking care of the children, sharing household responsibilities, giving them diamonds on important dates. But how do you know for sure? But I know. I do not have any questions. But where do we go next? I look at her, and the smile disappears because I'm not smiling. This question is the elephant in the room that none of us wants to look closely at. Where do we go next? We could try again. Maybe start dating, move in together again, although I'll have to move in with you. My sister Jen moved in with me after my divorce. She has 2 children, and I will give her my place and help her with the rent. I don't know, Mona. Just because I said I forgive you doesn't mean I forgive you and will take you back. She half smiles at me. Are you saying that you lied on your deathbed? This will disappoint millions of romantics. I thought I would die and not have to do anything about what I said. You can say anything when you don't have to worry about keeping what you promised. You can promise anything when you don't have to worry about tomorrow. She shakes her head in mock disappointment. It's so legal, dear. We don't have to do anything, Mona. We can just go back to our lives and try to continue as we were. Of course, I won't marry Cindy, and she won't have anything to do with me anymore, but I will survive. And you can go back to what you've been doing for the last 9 months. I tried my best not to know anything about your life. Return to Norman. I haven't seen Norman for a year and a half. I'm doing the calculations. So you continued to sleep with him for 3 months after I caught you. You clearly weren't too shaken by remorse for cheating on me. And you told Dr. Myers during your consultation that you stopped seeing him after that night. She looks at me with a hard look, and it's hard for me to read. She seems to be mad at me when I'm the one who has the right to be royally mad. I lied to Myers. Until the minute you walked in that night, I prayed that you would know. I wanted to see your face. You bastard, you left our marriage long before I did. I was surprised that I reacted this way. I really felt guilty when I saw the look on your face. But when I was in the bathroom, I remembered what led up to that night. And then, after what you said and what you did, I became even more angry with you. So yes, I continued to sleep with him. He was good in bed, and I hated you. That's why I fought you for divorce at first, just to make you even angrier. That's how I felt. What can I say? Could you say that you're sorry? I'm sorry I hurt you. That's not the same as saying you're sorry for what you did. Do you want us to start our new life with a lie? No, and that's why we won't start a new life. Because you're not sorry even now. We sit in awkward silence. Finally, to break the silence, I say, I never understood. What did I do that was so terrible that made you feel justified in sleeping with my friend and partner? You didn't listen very carefully during the consultations, did you? I was just walking around to finally get rid of you. I knew it. Do you really want to know, or would it be easier for you to continue thinking that I'm just a miserable bitch that you're forced to love? Calm my curiosity. Do you remember one night about 5 years ago, a couple of days before Christmas? This must have been in 2004. We were invited to see the lawyer you met, Lena, I think. I try to remember, and somehow I remember. Len Murray, yes, I remember, although God knows why. We went to dinner. We invited them to dinner, but they couldn't go because their regular babysitter couldn't come that night. Remember, they had a little girl. She was about 3 years old, adorable little brunette, and they had a 6-month-old baby. It wasn't too late, and the little girl insisted on coming out and showing you her computer game, which taught her colors and shapes. I sat and talked with Len and his wife while you let the girl sit on your lap and show you how the computer game worked. I look at her as the tone of her voice changes, and it takes me by surprise again. Tears flowed down her cheeks. Wife Len said, "Funny, Jamie looks so much like your wife. She could be yours." There's a tone in her voice that I've never heard before. I will never forget this until the end of my days. The look you gave me back then. You held that little girl on your lap, and you looked at me, and it was like I had somehow disappointed you. It was that week when we returned from the fertility clinic, and they told us that our tests were completely normal, but due to some genetic abnormality mine could not be fertilized and carried to term. After 2 years of scheduled sex, taking hormones and supplements, and trying every possible quack remedy we could find, and everything turned out to be so simple. I just couldn't give you children. When we got home that night, I knew you were upset. I got on my knees and was going to please you, and then I was going to take you to the bedroom and give you the greatest sex of your life. She leans towards me and looks into my eyes, and I can see the rage boiling inside her. And you remember what you did, bastard. You pushed me away. You pushed me away, buttoned up your pants, and said, "I'm just not in the mood." You left me for the office. I just stayed there on my knees and cried. It was more than just refusing sex, although God knows it was painful enough. You rejected me. So I went to the bedroom, changed into my pajamas, and watched late-night shows. Around midnight, I got up and went to the office. You were sitting in that damn chair. The big screen was turned off. You just sat there, sipping scotch and looking at the ceiling. I think you had the Cranberries playing on your stereo. I woke up at 3 a.m. I couldn't sleep. You weren't in bed, so I went back to the office. I don't know if you moved. The Cranberries were still playing, the bottle of scotch was half empty, and you were drinking and looking at the same spot on the ceiling. You didn't even notice me. You were somewhere else. Did you cry? You didn't come to bed that night. Somehow, I don't know how, you drained that bottle, took a shower, and arrived at work on time the next morning. You didn't say a word to me. She wipes away her tears, returning to the present. That's when our marriage started to die, Louis. You pretended to be a good husband, but you started to leave me that night. I'm trying to remember that night. Now she comes back to me in parts. I thought I was just hurt and wanted to be alone. It hurt more than I allowed myself to remember. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that I was an only child. I never thought, and still don't, how she must have felt when I went out drinking and trying to numb the pain that night. It was the night when I fully realized that we would not have little dark-haired boys or girls bearing our characteristics that we could pamper and create dreams for. Friends kindly offered to adopt. Sorry, but this would never work for me. It would be just the two of us, growing old together, watching our friends' children become school children, then high school students, and give their parents grandchildren. For now, we would be alone. I was very drunk that night, but I think it was the worst night of my life until I walked in and saw Mona and Norman. It was the night I lost hope for the future and realized that what I had was all I would ever have. She interrupts my thoughts. And you want to know another reason why I liked sleeping with Norm? Why not? Hit me hard. Because he never, it seems to me, in his entire life thought about having children with someone. For him, they simply do not exist. Women are not mothers, they're just for sex. And I liked it. When I was with him, I did not for a second feel that I was disappointing him, that I could not make him happy. All he wanted to do was sex. I can understand that. Maybe that's why our sex life came to naught, because every time it reminded us of what we would never have. But why Norm? Why a friend? You are a beautiful woman. You could have an affair with anyone. Why my friend? She shrugs. He was nearby. I know it sounds cold, but you want the truth, right? I never looked for strangers, even when I decided that you wouldn't want me anymore. But Norm, he never stopped. You know what he was like. He acted like he was playing with you, but he had been hitting on me since we got married. We both knew if I said yes, he would be inside me before I could even finish saying yes. And for a long time I said no. He was just old Norm. He was handsome enough, but he never aroused wild desire in me. Until one evening a year before you caught us. Funny, that's almost the same thing he told you. He was free that night, and I had nothing to do, and you were out as usual, and he said, "Why not have dinner? Nothing funny, just two friends. Louis won't mind." And of course, after we drank a little, he started pestering me. She sees the expression on my face and says, "Sorry, Louis. I'm trying to be honest with you. I can say that I never loved him. Not the way I loved you. But you weren't there, but he was, and I did it. And now it's history. This happened. I can't undo this, no matter how much you love me." We sat in silence for a long time. If this were a romantic novel, at that moment we would both burst into tears of regret, hug and promise to do everything right next time, she says finally. It's a bad, really vulgar novel, I say, and somehow we can both smile at that. There will be millions of people who will be bitterly disappointed if we don't get back to each other. They won't have to live with any of us, I say. For two pretty smart, highly paid professionals, we've really managed to ruin our lives, haven't we? We both sit and think about it. I don't know why, maybe because I can't think of anything else to talk about, but I remember the story of Carl Cameron and the unusual words he used. What does indistinct mean? She looks at me with bewilderment. In the 2 article, when Cameron told you what happened, he said you became inarticulate. What happened? A blank mask appears on her face, and I know I've struck a nerve. Whenever she is in pain or doesn't want to talk about something, this mask comes down. I have no idea what nerve ending I touched. She looks down at the floor, then looks around the room, showing great interest in the monitors that monitor my heart, but she doesn't see my eyes. Now I'm really getting curious. She starts talking without looking at me. You always surprise me, Lou. Because I'm so damn smart, I forget that's what attracted me to you when we met in college. You're probably the only guy I've ever met who might be smarter than me. How you captured that one word, I will never understand. She finally looks at me, and I'm surprised to see an almost embarrassed look on her face. I would lie to you, but now you suspect, so you will find my sister or her children, and sooner or later, you will find out the truth. I had just returned home from work when Cameron called. It was 9 p.m. I worked long hours, but the money was good. Jen was getting ready to put her youngest to bed, while her older daughter was watching TV. When Cameron introduced himself, I didn't attach any importance to it. Sometimes reporters call me for information on cases they cover. They called me a couple of times about your business. Then he started telling me about your accident and your last goodbye. I heard someone scream and wondered what happened to Jen and the children. It was only when she walked through one door and her daughter through another, into the kitchen where I answered the bell, that I realized it was me screaming. Jen was holding me and her daughter was trying to rip the phone out of my hand, and I was screaming and crying, and Cameron later told me that I called him a damn liar and said there is no way you died in a plane crash. You're too good a pilot. I realized later that I thought he said you died in that accident. He thought I was crazy, because I'm crazy. Jen pushed me to the floor while her daughter held my right arm with both of hers. They told me later that I had grabbed one of the short knives from the set we keep in the kitchen drawer. I had several cuts on my wrists and arms, but they prevented me from bringing the knife to my throat. I look at her and she holds out her arms and wrists. There are bandages on both arms and wrists that I didn't notice before because they are flesh-colored and small. I can't believe what I'm seeing. They took the knife and Jen basically sat on me until her daughter, Jillian, found out the real story from Cameron. They made up some story for him and hung up, and then Jen kept telling me you were alive and taken to Shan's in Jacksonville until I stopped screaming and crying. Jen and Jillian stayed up all night with me. Jen didn't want to call the police or an ambulance because she was afraid that if word got out that I was trying to kill myself, it would kill my career, so they fed me Valium all night. Jen said I've been talking to you all night, and the only thing I said over and over again was, sorry, sorry. I look at her, and for someone who basically talks for a living, I can't think of anything to say. Come on, Lou, she finally says. It should be like shooting fish in a barrel. Like you said, hit me hard. I, I, do you want to know why I tried to cut my throat? Because in those moments I thought you were dead, and there would never be a chance to tell you that you didn't deserve what I did. I remembered the man I married and the man I loved, and I realized that I would have to live the rest of my life, hearing your goodbye in my head and remembering the look on your face that night. I was hysterical because I could never tell you that although I forgot for a while that I loved you, I never stopped. Despite how it looked, I never stopped. I know I don't deserve you, and I don't deserve to be loved the way you love me. And if I could, Lou, believe me, if I could find the words or the magic, I would let you go. I extend my left hand to her, and for the first time in 2 years, she is in the same bed with me. I hug her with my left arm, and she wets my hospital gown with her hot tears. Did you ever hear what happened to Norm? No, I haven't heard anything from him lately. What's happened? She lies next to me, still dressed, but it's nice. Every now and then there's a flash from the doorway, and I know some nurse is moonlighting, taking a photo that will probably be shown around the world. I don't know how, but the rumor in the court is that someone received photographs of him with a young assistant public defender about 6 months ago. She was only 23 years old and had just graduated from law school. As usual, Norm fucked and abandoned. But unfortunately, this girl turned out to be Gwen Case. She turned out to be Charlie Case's younger sister. You know, Judge Herring's bailiff. Charlie Case, this doesn't seem like a very smart thing to do. She looks at me with a question on her face. I give her a look of complete innocence. No, that turned out to be not very smart. Someone broke into his apartment one night and maimed him. Norm was in the hospital for a month, and when he was released, he disappeared the next day. They say he opened a practice in Seattle. I look into her eyes to see if she has any regrets about what happened to the man who was her lover for over a year. She looks at me with a look of innocence, just like me. The funny thing is that 2 street people gave the police a description of a huge guy that seems to match the description of Charlie as the one they saw entering Norm's building 2 hours before the police received an anonymous call that Norm was beaten. That doesn't sound good to Charlie. It probably wouldn't have been good, but Judge Herring confirmed that Case was at his home in Deerwood playing poker and drinking at the same time people on the street said the big man was entering the Norman building. And with the district court judge as an alibi, the police could not continue. Norm couldn't identify his attacker. I think no. I can move my right hand enough to lift her chin so I can see her eyes. I can't say I'm sorry, but there's a part of me that remembers that guy who was my friend. I told him a long time ago that you can't drag everyone into bed, be it someone's wife, sister, or mother, and not expect it to catch up with you sooner or later. He should have listened to you. You were a better friend than he deserved. She looks at me sadly. And a better husband than I deserved. I leave this and ask, does anyone know how the photographs got into Case's possession? It's a mystery. They think it must have been someone who knew Norm and his habits well, could afford a private investigator or take the photographs himself, and knew exactly who to photograph and to whom to send them. It had to be someone who knew the situation in court. The next day, she's here again, this time in a rather tight jacket and a tight skirt. She's back on the bed next to me. No one from the hospital says anything. Even though she's still wearing clothes and we haven't even kissed, it feels right. Have you still thought about my offer to move in with you? Yes. And what do you think? I don't know. Why? What is the problem? She looks at me and her smile disappears. She looks at me with irritation. You know that I slept with him for a year, in every possible way. Mona, I know what you did, or I can imagine it. I know this intellectually, but it's different to hear those words, to actually see him inside of you. She gets up and slides off the bed to sit next to me. Lou, I can only imagine how much this hurts you because you've never hurt me like that. But try using your brain for a minute, okay? I nod. My brain is not the problem here. I can tell you a lot of things to try to take the sting away, but the simplest thing I can think of is this. When you were in bed with that little trailer girl, Carter girl, I'm still incredibly jealous of her. Have you ever told her how gorgeous she is? Has she ever told you that you're the best in the world and she can't get enough of you? So what? Work with me, okay? You said those things, and she said them to you, right? Well, that's what I did with Norm. It's simple sex talk, pillow talk. I was having a good time, and I wanted him to enjoy it too. What is your point of view? The simple fact is that there was nothing special in these words. I nod. It sounded pretty good back then. She begins to smile widely. Now, come on, Lou, let's be adults. Did you really think I was comparing you to the real God? No. I was just trying to keep my man horny and hard-working. If it makes you feel better, helps you deal with your pain, just think of it as me acting for his benefit. I just didn't know that I would have another audience. She stands on a chair and leans over. She gives me my first real kiss since that night. She's wearing her lawyer clothes when she comes into my room the next day. Tastefully tailored business suit, trousers, blouse, a jacket included. She is carrying her briefcase. Late, almost 5 p.m. She seemed to be doing business in her office or court before stopping by to see me. Are we doing something official? Yes, she says with a barely noticeable smile. Despite myself, I'm starting to get excited. I wonder if I've developed a taste for attractive women in business suits. She opens her briefcase and pulls out a stack of legal documents. Seriously, what is this? She hands me the top document. It's a binding contract that requires me to provide her with a sample of my sperm, with a 6-figure penalty for failure to comply. What? I can't speak. I've been thinking about this ever since I got that phone call, Liu. I take this very seriously. I want you to sign these papers. Today, in fact. If not, I don't think we can get back together. In fact, I don't think I'll come back here. Are you giving me an ultimatum? Essentially, yes. What game are you playing now? You know I won't sign this. Look at other documents. You agree to provide me with enough samples to fertilize 2 children using in vitro fertilization. My sister has already signed the documents. When and if they are fertilized, they will be transplanted into me, and I will be able to carry them to term. The problem is not in my reproductive system, but in my eggs. If I couldn't, she signed an agreement to carry them for us. The other documents free you from any legal responsibility for their care and upbringing, but they also prevent me from doing anything with them that you don't like. I'm a good lawyer. These documents will withstand any judicial scrutiny. What they mean is that I cannot force you to ever pay a cent for their upkeep, education, etc. And I can never stop you from seeing them and being in their lives. In fact, if you file a lawsuit, I won't be able to take them out of state, move anywhere without your permission, or even get married, or bring a man into the house without your consent. I just look at the documents and try to read her mind. I still don't understand why you're doing this. She spins around in the chair on that delicious ass, and it makes me even more horny, and I wonder if she's doing it on purpose, knowing how hard it is to concentrate with so much blood rushing to my little brain. My inability to give you children ruined our first marriage. Did you notice that I said first, because I intend to marry you again? You can deny it, but I know it's true. And what you never thought about when you felt sorry for yourself was that it was killing me too. I wanted children, our children. I don't agree with you about adoption. I would be happy to adopt, but for some reason you would never agree to this. You wanted them to be your children by blood, so they will be your children, in every way. And because we use my sister's designs in every way that matters, they will be mine too. When they are older, we will tell them the truth, but by then it won't matter. They will be mine and yours. We looked at each other for a while. I would kiss you, she says with a smile, but I don't want your little head to influence the thoughts of your big head. I want, so that it is something you agree with, because it will affect our entire lives, whether we are together or not. After minutes of thinking, I know what I'm going to do. It really doesn't take much thought, although she's right. This will change the lives of both of us. You're so smart, Mona. The problem is that you are used to being smarter than everyone you deal with. And you keep forgetting that although you were second in our graduating class, I was first. Are you leading to something? She asks, but I think she's starting to understand. When was the last time you had sex? She's about to say something, then gives up. 2 Saturdays ago. The weekend before you realized you still loved me and hated what you did to me and Norman, right? Who were you with? She hesitates then, with the lawyer who works in the next office. We had a date a few weeks ago. Have you slept with him before, or was this the first time? We met several times. Has it been a year and a half since you were with Norman? Were you chaste all this time until that Saturday? Despite herself, she laughs. Oh, Lou, you smart bastard. Why don't you stop this nonsense? Ask me. Fine. How many men have you slept with in total in the last year and a half? She looks down at the floor, then meets my eyes challengingly. I don't know. I really didn't count. 30 or 40, probably. Some of them were one-offs. I dated others from time to time during this time. I would lie, but you would know. You would dig until you found everything or enough. God, what a bitch you are. But the smile I give her takes the sting out of the insult. I know. As if any single guy who was really hot wouldn't have gone through so many women in a year and a half. And you yourself said that I'm hot. I didn't have to work hard to get guys in bed. Besides, you slept with Cindy's sweet breasts for 9 months. Do you feel guilty about this? Did I say you should feel guilty, Mona? No, but I know what you're thinking. Even if you smile, you think, what rubbish. She slept with 40 guys, while I was with one woman. Although I know you had one-night stands before you met Cindy, but a guy with 40 women is a stud. A woman with 40 guys is a whore. She reaches for the documents to pull them out of my hands. I think that answers my question. You could hardly live with the knowledge that I slept with the same guy. There's no way you could ever live with me after finding out I've been with 30 or 40 guys. So after all this drama, we're done. Once and for all. And we will never have these children, this little boy and girl. She looks into my eyes and bites her lip. Her voice is as cold as ice, but her eyes tell a different story. Well, after you get out of here, you'll have a lot of women to charm. I know you are portrayed as God's romantic gift to single women. You can find someone you can love, who can give you children. You'll be happy. We'll both be fine. She looks down at the documents in my hand. I don't let them go. I snatch the documents from her hand and hold them with my right hand, which I can now use for most things. Give me a pen. Now it's her turn to just watch. Finally, she takes an expensive silver pen from the inside pocket of her jacket. She hands it to me without taking her eyes off mine. She's trying to read my mind, and I like to keep her in the dark. Does anyone need to notarize or witness these documents? She nods, but doesn't get up to call anyone. Why? I don't have the heart to torment her any longer. You've always been a real bitch. Do you love a sex? That's why I know intellectually that I can't hate you too much for what happened to Norman. I had to satisfy you, and I actually turned my back on you for 3 years. And then you were on your own for more than a year. I knew you would be with someone. You didn't mean to be chased. I don't know exactly how I will deal with this, but we will find a way. As for children, I want them too. And I never thought about having them with anyone other than you. Of course, in addition to the fact that it gives us something we both want, you think it gives you a pass from responsibility. In the last 10 years, you've only had 2 men, I believe Norm and me. And in the last year and a half, you've been with 40. Diets with me, and maybe a little more savory food with Norm. She's trying to read my mind again. She's still not sure where this is going, but I think she's starting to get the idea. I think you really love me, Mona. I really think so. And I think that you want to come back to me and start a new relationship and raise our children. But I also think you like the single girl lifestyle and sex with different guys. And I know that in the back of your mind, you think that if we have these children, I will love them. And if you make a few mistakes, have a little fun and get caught again, I won't want to leave you because children will be in our lives and I will be tied to you with chains that I don't want to break. She shakes her head. You son of a bitch. Why do you have to be so smart? Blame my mom and dad. If you understand all this, then why? Why agree to this? Do you love me that much? You could have children with any woman. I extend my left hand and pull her onto the bed. With my right hand, I grab her head and pull her in for a long, long kiss. I let her go, and she sat back down on the chair. Her lipstick is smeared, her blouse and jacket are wrinkled. She is still the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. Yes, I think so, and I want children, and you didn't think your plan through. You see, chains will bind me to you, but they will also tie you to me. You will fall in love with our children. I know you well enough, and you may cheat on me, but you will cheat on these children that you fought so hard to bring into this world. You will love me more, not less, when you become a mother and we become a family. I'm willing to bet that you'll love me and them and us enough to give up casual sex. I think you'll have me in bed thinking about the other guys you've had over the last year and a half, but I think you'll eventually settle down with me and our kids. This is the bet I'm willing to make for us and for them. She takes my left hand in hers. Do you remember I said that I don't deserve you? I don't deserve to be loved the way you love me. It's still true. You just got lucky. She pats me lightly on the cheek. But you are terribly selfish. I pull her towards me and stop talking. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.